Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Licensing and Examination Committee. First off, I'll ask Christy if you could please call the roll.
Derek Matos. I see that Derek is present. I didn't hear you though. Tanya Fairley.
Present.
Yolanda Jimenez.
Present.
Weeks. I do believe Mr. Weeks will be joining us soon. I will turn it, we do have a quorum, so we can continue this meeting. I'll turn it back over to Derek.
Thank you, Christy. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just took out my earphones and switched off to these here. The wired seems to work a little bit better. Okay, great. So thank you for the quorum. This discussion and approval of the committee meeting minutes from June 13th meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes, or do I have a motion to approve at this time?
I call to approve.
Okay, wonderful. Do I have a second?
I second.
Awesome. Looks like we have a motion to approve with the second. At this time, I'd like to open up to public comment only on this agenda item. Moderator, can we please do so?
We are now open for public comment on agenda item 2, the meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, let's go ahead, and it looks like we have a motion. Christy, can you please call the roll on the vote?
Derek Matos.
Aye.
Tanya Fairley.
Yes.
And Yolanda Jimenez.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes.
Wonderful. Let's go ahead and now let's review for our next agenda item. Let's review the current licensing workload. At this time, I'll turn this over to Christy, and she can walk us through this information.
Thank you so much. So we thought we'd take this opportunity for this committee, since we are new at getting back into our committee swing, and kind of give the committee a view of what we have currently in process in our office. This is something that we actually monitor on a weekly basis. So we receive these reports from our staff every week. Every Monday we get our licensing weekly report. So this is a snapshot in time, and what we've provided in your packets is the information that came to us for the week for September 19th through September 23rd. Again, we get these every week, but in order to put it in a packet, we had to pick a week. So we want to kind of walk through this and just kind of show you the volume of work that we currently have in the office. So we start off with our reciprocity applications. Reciprocity has increased since SB 803, as you don't have to have that 3 of 5 year requirement any longer. So basically, it's license for license. Anyone who's licensed in another state can get a license in California. And what we've done is we separate our workload because we receive paper applications and we receive online applications. Our paper applications have to go through the Department of Consumer Affairs cashiering unit. So they do the first process, and they take the money, they deposit the checks, and then they send that workload over to us. We get workload delivered to us on a daily basis, but we track them separately. So you can see that the paper reciprocity applications, we have 52 of those, 123 online for 175 people that are waiting to to have that application reviewed for reciprocity. Reciprocity has a high number of deficiencies because we have to get a certification from the state they're coming from. Sometimes that comes in with the application and sometimes it doesn't. So there's oftentimes some deficiencies on that. And then we go into our initial, what we call our initial apps. So these are just our straight exam apps, people that have gone to school in California and that are submitting a proof of training and their exam application. So paper is at 425 and online is at 953 for 1,378 applications pending right now. We also always track the oldest date because we always are looking at our backlog and trying to keep up on the oldest date of any applications. All of our staff process the oldest date first. So that is how that is done. We're currently dating back to August 19th. The next page shows our re-exam applications. Those do come in paper and online as well. They definitely is a quicker process when somebody reapplies online for that because it doesn't have to go through the waiting period of the cashiering unit. We currently have 329 re-exam applications pending. And then we have our establishment processes, again, paper and online. We have 530 establishment applications pending. That's a pretty high number right now. We are seeing a lot of new applications coming in. That doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of new salons are opening. It usually means salons are changing hands. There's a lot of salons in shops that just go from one that sell. It's an interesting dynamic in California. We average a certain amount of establishments throughout the entire state, and that number stays fairly consistent through the years because so many salons change hands as opposed to opening brand new. Next, we have our duplicates. We have a lot of people that request duplicate licenses. 423 of those. We have a lot of name changes that we get, 277 pending of those. Paper and online certifications, we have 115 certifications. So those are people that are looking to get licensed in another state where we send a license certification to that state. And then on page 3 is kind of what we refer to as, got ahead of myself. We have out of state, out of country. Those are much more difficult applications, so we have those right at the top of that page. We have our apprentice applications. Right now, we have new apprentice licenses, which is, the number is 1021. We have codes for all of these for our system. And there are 131 apprentice licenses pending right now. And then it goes on, I won't go through each one, but it goes on to what we kind of call our miscellaneous licensing workload. And that's all the changes that happen. Apprentices have a lot of changes. They transfer trainers, they transfer establishments. We have certifications that we receive. And I believe I'm going to pause for just a quick second and see. I see we have Steve coming on, so I'm just going to pause for 1 second to test his mic.
This is the moderator. Welcome, Steve. Can we have a mic check, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry I'm late, everyone.
Okay, just going back to welcome, Steve. We are on agenda item number 3. And we're just giving an overview of the weekly workload in the licensing unit. We thought it'd be a good idea to bring it to this committee just to see kind of the volume of workload that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So on page 3, we talk about, it just kind of shows all of our what we call miscellaneous licensing workload. So it's all kinds of different types of stuff that we get. We get interpreter requests, we get pending refunds, So it's all that extra workload that we have to handle. And then we also, of course, monitor all of that by the oldest dates. When we go into page 4, again, this is a report that both Carrie and I receive on a weekly basis to monitor the workload. Licensing is obviously our biggest production, and it causes the most emails and it causes the most phone calls. So we really try to stay on top of where we are in all of this workload. Our chart number 2 shows the applications received. We always like to monitor what's received from one week to the next. And then also our applications processed. We always look at what's been processed one week, what's been processed the previous week. You can see that on chart number 3, in the current week, we processed a couple hundred more applications than we did the prior week. And then on page 5 is additional information that we track because I find it super important. Our chart number 4 is our public contact. We look at how many phone calls our CIC unit, that's our Consumer Information Center. So they are the ones who answer the 800 number. So we like to monitor how many phone calls go into that unit. We monitor how many people actually visit our front counter. We monitor our emails, which you can see during this week. We received 1,447 emails in a week. We also monitor our emails sent, and we monitor the mail that we received. So we get a lot of mail from our cashiering unit that has a fee. We call this, we consider all of this mail that comes into our internal mailroom that we have to sort. And we also get a lot of mail that just doesn't have a fee, that it could be a letter, it could be a stray certification mailed directly to us, all kinds of different things, but we do track it. On chart 5, this shows the volume of work in different areas that are not necessarily part of an application process. So we track how many establishments closures were processed. RPOs is our returned post office. So this is basically returned mail. When we send a renewal license out, it cannot be forwarded. So government mail is not able to be forwarded. So they get returned to us. So we monitor that as well, and we notify that on their Breeze system. We monitor any convictions that we've processed. So anybody that's marked yes that they have a conviction. Any military fee waivers, military apps processed, any asylum apps processed, and CIC escalations. And that is when the Consumer Information Center takes a call and they feel they need to raise it to a higher level. So we have a process for how they can do that. And then lastly on this page, we obviously used to schedule our own exams, so we always knew how many people were getting scheduled on a daily, weekly basis. And now we don't have that process anymore, since we don't schedule the exams, but the actual applicant schedules their own exam. So they receive an approval from us, they receive an approval from PSI, and then we don't hear anything else from them until they renew. If they pass the test, we don't hear from them until they renew. If they fail the test, we get a re-exam from them. And we felt uncomfortable, a little control issue with us there. So we started reporting how many people are actually scheduling their exams with PSI. So we monitor it. It's obviously it's up to the applicant to schedule their exam. We just like to see how many people are getting their approval to schedule that exam and actually doing it. So we look at this weekly as well. And then we, of course, on page 6 have our exam pass rates, which we monitor weekly. And you can see we follow the increases or decreases in any of the pass rates. Obviously, with our new exam, we're monitoring this very closely, which we'll actually talk a little bit about in our next agenda item when we talk a little more about our Spanish pass rates. That's a lot, but I wanted to show the licensing committee what we look at on a weekly basis and what we actually have volume-wise for our licensing staff. So now I will open it up for any questions.
Christy, I have a question.
Yes.
I got a couple actually, if you don't mind. My first question is in regard to backlog. I know we've talked in the past about there being a backlog still from COVID. Just how far along are you guys currently in regards to that backlog?
We don't really consider us having a backlog from COVID. What we see now is just the increase in general in applications. And it could be a couple of different things. It could be that schools were slow, obviously, during COVID. It could be there's a shorter time. The 1,000 hours has impacted us. We have a lot of students that maybe had completed around 800 hours, and the schools are transitioning them into a 1,000-hour program. So we're getting a lot of applications sooner. It's not that unusual for us. We this board has never, we don't really have a downtime. We don't, there's a lot of other boards that can base their workload on graduations from college or graduations twice a year. We don't have that because people graduate from cosmetology and barbering school almost every day. We get applications every day. So when it comes to backlog, what we base our backlog on is just how long it's taking us to process the work. So right now, like, we always look at our exam apps because that's the biggest thing. And we, on this date, we were about 6-7 weeks back. That's far too long for us. We'd like to get these apps done within 4 weeks, but we have had staffing issues. We are almost back to fully staffed in our licensing division. And so I do think that we'll be able to clean those numbers up pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome, thank you. And that was going to be my next question. I know we spoke a little bit in the past about there being like such an overwhelming amount of emails that you guys had to take time out to answer. How is that coming along? Is it getting any better? Are you seeing you guys are having to stop again to get back on track with those things?
It's not getting better, to be honest. We actually just this past Friday pulled everyone we could to answer emails. And it's but we have some new options that we're putting into place. One, we're going to start recruiting for what we are doing a trial program of our own, basically, communications unit. So we are looking to hire limited term people that will only handle emails and phone calls. And that will relieve our current licensing staff from being able to process those applications. But we are also doing a couple things that's pretty exciting. We are looking to hold some town hall meetings with schools. We are noticing that most people that are applying online are not uploading their proof of training. So what happens is they then have to email their proof of training. So those emails get mixed in with general email questions. So we always have this huge number of emails. We try to go through them all and pull out proof of trainings to a separate folder so that those could be processed separately. But the volume of emails is always a struggle. So what we've done is we've just announced that we're holding a town hall meeting on, I believe, the 17th of this month. And we're going to go through with schools and students. We want any schools and any students to join the town hall so that we can do a demo on how to properly update your Breeze record and make sure you're uploading the POT, because it's going to save a ton of time in getting that application processed. The other thing we're doing is we're creating a separate email box for POTs so that if you do have to submit a POT, especially for schools, you have an inbox, an email address basically, so that those proof of trainings go directly to that email inbox and don't get mixed in with all the other general emails. Because our general emails, we get citation questions, we get enforcement complaints, all kinds of other emails. But with those proof of trainings going in there, it's delaying the processing time than it would if we had the proof of training from the get-go. So hopefully those two things are going to improve the processes.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then for my last question is in regard to the PSI, the access. I can understand how you felt like there was a lack of control in all of that. Is this a collaboration per se, or are you guys tracking just based on the applications that are coming through you? And can there possibly be something in the future whereas, you know, the board and PSI is communicating to know exactly what those numbers are?
We get that information from, we have a partner site with PSI, and they're actually super helpful. They've been hand in hand with us this whole time. So we are able to pull data out of their system. So they've given us access to pull reports out of their system. Something else that we're going to talk about, what we're working with them on Spanish pass rates as well. So they're pretty good at being very collaborative with us and helping us out whatever we need.
Awesome, thank you, Christy. Does anybody else in the committee have any questions at this time?
I don't have a question, just a comment. My question was about the PSI too, because when she said getting that information, I'm like, wait, how are we obtaining that information? So that was good too. That was good to know. And it's good to know that they are working with us instead of making it difficult for us to obtain that information, considering it is their platform.
Yep.
Awesome. At this time, if there's no action needed on this item, so we can go ahead and open this up to public comment. Moderator, could you please assist us in that?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Hold on just a moment. We are now open for public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. We're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is the review and discussion of the Spanish language exam pass rates. Next, we have our continued discussion in this area on the pass rates. I will turn the discussion over to Christy once again to provide an update on this.
Thank you. So as we've been discussing for a long time, we're really looking at different ways we can try to improve those Spanish pass rates. I wanted to share that we recently surveyed all of the states to try to determine what's going on in other states, if they're having some of the same issues. What I found was very interesting. We have listed some information that we were able to obtain, which shows that some other states are having difficulties as well with their Spanish pass rates. I found it very interesting that a lot of states offer Spanish exams or examinations in Spanish, but they have no idea if anyone ever requests it in Spanish. In fact, we found that many states don't track their pass-fail rates at all, which I thought was interesting. So this is what we've been able to obtain. I think it shows what we anticipate, but I did want to talk about what we are looking to do with PSI's partnership, actually. So we just met with PSI within the last 10 days, and we talked to them about our concerns, and what we wanted to see is if we could try to determine if there's a specific content area that Spanish test takers are doing more poorly in, so that we could help educate schools, to focus on these areas. Like maybe Spanish test takers are doing worse in chemical services. So we're looking to get that data from the exam vendor right now. We don't have it yet, but we do expect it soon. One of the other things that we talk to them about is providing specific reports to schools. And this is something that we've never had before, and I know schools will appreciate this. But we do have to change our system. And what we want to be able to do is for a school to actually pull their own data out of the PSI system and see exactly where their students are doing well and where they're doing poorly. So in order to make that happen, we do have to modify the Breeze system, and we are putting in to have that done. It's an unfortunate time of year that this is happening because Breeze is in the process of updating any statutory changes for the entire department that have happened in the year 2022. So we expect this to happen. We put a target date in for March 1st of 2023. We hope that it will happen by then. But what that does is when we transfer a student to PSI to be tested, it also tells PSI a school code for what school code that they attended. And then once we have that established, schools will be able to go in, pull their own data, and see exactly where their students are doing well and where they're doing poorly. So they just showed me a sample of this report just last week. It's really impressive. I think it could really be incredibly beneficial to our schools to see this. It's not something we've ever been able to offer before, so we're super excited about that. Other than that, we're continuing to monitor. We are seeing lower pass rates in the barbers than we have in the past. So I actually met with PSI on this as well, and we are currently scheduling. I'm waiting for dates right now. We're going to do a Southern California and a Northern California town hall specifically for barber schools, barber students, to really get to do another examination overview. What PSI will do is go through the full exam, go through the content area, explain how the exam was developed. So we are hoping to have that here within the next few weeks. We're just waiting for dates to make that happen.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
I'm sorry, this is Steve. I've got a quick question on consistency in exam coverage by state. Do all of these states, are all of us essentially using the same exam? And what's some may have a 54% pass rate or a 32% pass rate. Is that because some states' examinations are just much more difficult than other states?
No, there are several exam vendors. We obviously use PSI. PSI is in Tennessee, so that would be the same exam. I'm not positive of the other states that they're in. I'm not positive what Alaska does. I know that Nevada does their own exam. So that's they develop it themselves. They don't use any testing vendor to develop it, or they might use a vendor to develop it, but it's a state-specific exam. It's not given anywhere else. So it's all over the board across the country of who's using which exams.
Great question, Steve. Thank you for that. I think that in regards to Tennessee using the same testing as we do, I think that could be helpful as well, considering they have a 45% pass rate, which is considerably higher than ours. We may possibly be able to draw some really good data from that as well. I have a question in regards to timing. I know that when you take the exam, there is a time limit for the exam. Is that broken down into sections and particular questions, or just the exam as a whole? I think that just as some insight, if that is a possibility, or we can do that, or it is being done, we could potentially draw to see if an examinee is taking, considerably longer time on one particular subject or one question that should give us some helpful insight that that particular part of the exam is a little bit more difficult, and that would help us in these forums with the schools as well to see how they can improve.
That's a good point. I don't think that there's sections that are timed. I believe a candidate has the full amount of time because I believe they can go back and relook at some of their questions. But I will double check to see if they do a timing on each question to see if they have that data where they could be struggling on maybe a specific question. And I believe they do, because they evaluate if a question's too hard or too easy, that's something they take into consideration in exam development. But I'll double check on that. That's a good question.
Awesome. And then my last one is it possible, since PSI is serving Tennessee as well, to make that comparison to see where we are as opposed to they are, and then, kind of make that distinction and see, okay, they're considerably higher in this, we're lower in this, maybe we can use some of their tools to improve those pass rates as well.
Yes, I can talk to the executive officer in Tennessee. I work very well with her. We work on a lot of projects together, so I could definitely reach out to her and see what we could compare. I will tell you that I don't believe they have anywhere near the volume that we do. So I will reach out and see what I can get in comparison for Tennessee. I'd probably get that from PSI as well, and see what we can look at and see if we can learn anything on that. That's a good idea.
This is Steve. Is it, do the health and safety laws differ state to state? Could that be cause of a variance also? Maybe ours are tougher than other states or others tougher than ours.
I don't think so. I do think that's true that health and safety might be different. However, all exams are based on 2 textbooks. And so the exams are based on the Milady textbook and the Pivot Point textbook. Back east, they do have a 3rd textbook that I'm not sure is used very often. I don't even know the name of it, but I do know there's a 3rd one. But on the exams, they have to reference the test questions in both textbooks because they're nationally known textbooks. So the exam is coming from the textbooks, not from our laws and regulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that question, Steve. Are there any other comments or questions from the other members?
This is Yolanda. I'm wondering if schools have the opportunity to see where they are struggling or where their students are struggling before getting the results from that exam. Do they do a pre-test, or do they do like a practice test, and we can pull from that so that we can head off before students fail the official exam?
They do not. And to my knowledge, I don't even believe there's a requirement schools have to do that.
Okay, just double checking, because when in education, students take a formative exam, which informs the instruction, so you can fill the holes before students take the real summative exam. So we're taking formative information from summative exams. We could be getting that information ahead of time so that we could possibly fill those holes before the students take the real exam.
Interesting.
Thank you very much for that, Yolanda. I think that's great insight. And if I could just add on to that, I know that in regards to apprenticeships, for apprenticeship programs, there is a series of practice exams that are taken, and then you do have to pre-test before you get signed out of a particular part. I don't know if all the programs do that, but I know certain programs within the Bay Area, they do that. So that may be something to consider. In regards to regular barber schools or cosmetology schools, I'm not 100% certain if they have that prerequisite, but to Yolanda's point, that may be a great thing to bring up at the forum or the round tables with these schools.
I second that, Derek. I know that the apprenticeship programs that I use here, they all have pre-exams, and even if I'm not mistaken, that Milady offers some pre-exams also that they log on to and take, that the apprenticeship school requires them to take prior to taking their test.
Correct. There is a workbook that goes hand in hand with the text, with all the practice examinations. Okay, great. Are there any other questions from the other members? Okay. So at this time, let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Moderator, if you could assist us in that.
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you very much. At this time, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. As we open this up, please note that we may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether or not to place it on a matter on the agenda for a future meeting. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, let's go ahead and do so. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 6. This is agenda items for our next meeting. Members, do you have any recommendations for any future agenda items? Okay, it looks like we don't have any recommendations for a future agenda item. At this time, I believe we can move forward to adjourn this meeting. If anybody has any other questions? Wonderful. Meeting adjourned at 12:43 p.m. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you, everyone else, and look forward to seeing everyone in person in San Diego in a couple of weeks.
Take care. Thank you.